When I first started reading about Springfield, there was this one image that really stuck with me. It was this picture of Haitian immigrants, and they were being accused of killing and eating wildlife. It felt so, I don't know, like something out of a really sensationalized news segment, meant to shock more than actually inform. And really got me thinking, like, what is actually going on in Springfield? What would lead to these really outlandish claims? And how are people navigating this complicated reality? Luckily for us, we have this NBC News article, and it really seems to go beyond just the headlines and gives, I think, a more balanced perspective of the situation. I thought it was really interesting, by the way, how the writer wove together all these different voices from Springfield. You have longtime residents, Haitian immigrants, local leaders. There were even people who were, let's just say, critical of all the newcomers coming in. It's messy, it's complicated. It's definitely a story that deserves a closer look.
It's so interesting how Springfield's story is very similar to a lot of other towns in the Rust Belt. These are the communities that were really built on the American dream, places that for a long time were associated with factories and a certain way of life. And when those industries shut down, it's like they left this hole, not just economically, but I think in a lot of ways a hole in terms of identity.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if your town has always been known for its steel mills or car factories, and then all of a sudden those factories close, how do you even begin to redefine yourself?
Exactly. And I think that's where a lot of the anxieties come from. The people who didn't leave, they stuck it out through the hard times, but you can understand why they'd be afraid of change, especially when it seems to be happening so quickly.
And it doesn't get more dramatic than the story in the article about James Fleur-Jane. He moved to Springfield from Haiti, hoping to make a better life for his family, for himself. And he was doing well. He had a good job. He was doing well for himself. But now, because of everything that's going on, the misinformation, the fear that's being spread, he's terrified to even let his kids play outside. It's just a really, really stark reminder that these aren't just political debates, right? Like, these issues have very real consequences on people's lives. Springfield's story, this rise and fall and then kind of this uncertain comeback, it feels like something that's happened in other parts of the Rust Belt, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And what's really interesting about Springfield is how much its identity was tied to these specific industries. It wasn't just, any factories closing down. It was places like the International Harvester plant. That place was a huge part of the community for almost 100 years. And when it finally closed in the 80s, it wasn't just the jobs that went away. It was a whole way of life.
It's like you can almost hear those factory floors when you're reading the article. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The writer does this amazing job, paints this really vivid picture of Sheridan Avenue, all these factories lined up, the air thick with that industrial smell, and then you turn the page and it's gone. Just empty lots, like scars on the landscape.
It's a powerful image. And I think that visual, that feeling of loss, it gets all mixed up with the anxieties about what the future holds, because even when there is a resurgence, which Springfield is experiencing, not everyone sees it as a good thing.
Yeah, it's like a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
On one hand, you've got new businesses moving in, there are new opportunities, but then on the other hand, housing costs start to go up. There's more competition for resources. And there's this feeling that the whole character of the town is changing.
Exactly. And it's in that kind of environment where people are already feeling uncertain that you tend to see anxieties about immigration really take hold. It becomes very easy to look at newcomers and think that they're the problem instead of seeing them as, a symptom of these larger economic and social changes that are happening.
And you can really feel that tension in the article, this clash of narratives. You have people who are really welcoming to the Haitian community. They see them as bringing new life into the city. But then you also have those who are, they're suspicious. They blame them for problems that honestly are much more complicated and go way back. And then, it wasn't already complicated enough in Springfield. You have someone like J.D. Vance come in, and it just adds this whole other layer to the whole thing.
Yeah, you really can't talk about what's happening in Springfield without talking about how politicians use this stuff. Yeah. J.D. Vance, he's that Republican politician from Ohio. Well, he saw what was going on in Springfield, all that anxiety, and he used it, plain and simple. He took those things people were saying about Haitian immigrants, those completely unfounded claims, and just made them louder. And he's even said straight up that he was using the situation to get ahead in politics.
I have to say, reading his words in the article, it's kind of scary. He talks about how he needed to create stories to get people's attention. I mean, it shows you how cynical this is, how people use fear and division to get what they want.
It's like a textbook case of how misinformation, especially coming from someone in a position of power, can have a real impact. It's like poisoning the well. People start to lose trust in institutions, things become more divided, and it creates this environment where prejudice can grow.
And, tragically, there's a really heartbreaking example of how dangerous that kind of talk can be in the article. It's the story of Aiden Clark, that 11-year-old boy who was killed in that school bus accident.
Aiden's death, it had nothing to do with immigration. But there were people who used the fact that the bus driver was a Haitian immigrant to push their own agenda. They twisted this horrible tragedy to fit their anti-immigration narrative. It just shows you how dangerous it is to exploit something like that for political gain.
It really makes you think about how do we deal with all this information, especially when it comes to these really emotional issues. We have to think critically. We have to question what we're being told. We have to be willing to look at things from different perspectives.
Absolutely. I think it's so important to always ask ourselves, who benefits from spreading this story?
Mm-hmm.
What are they basing it on? Is it based on facts, or are they just trying to manipulate people's emotions and use their fears against them?
We need to be smarter about the information we consume. We have to remember that empathy and compassion are so important, especially with complicated issues like immigration, and of course, whenever something tragic happens, like what happened to Aiden Clark.
Yeah, and it's so easy to get caught up in all the negative stuff, the blaming, but there are good things happening in Springfield too. The article mentions some of them.
Right. Even with all the tension, there are people working to make Springfield a more welcoming place for everyone. They're hiring people who speak Creole, offering language classes. They're creating opportunities for people to connect and learn about each other's cultures.
It's really important to see that they're not shying away from the challenges. They're acknowledging them, but choosing to focus on solutions. They see the humanity in everyone. It gives you hope, you know? Even when things seem so divided, there's always room for empathy, understanding, and building bridges.
It's like what that woman, Betty Jones, said in the article. She's a longtime resident of Springfield. She said, "These newcomers are our neighbors now, and we have a choice to make. We can either welcome them or we can fear them."
That's such a powerful statement. Change can be scary, but it also brings new possibilities, opportunities for growth, for building something better, something more vibrant.
Makes you think, right? If a town like Springfield, with everything it's going through, can still find a way to come together, well, maybe there's hope for all of us.
I'd like to believe that. You know, what's happening in Springfield is really just a smaller version of what we're seeing across the country. Immigration, the economy, people losing trust in institutions. It's this battle between facts and fear. And how we deal with those challenges, how we handle these complex issues, how we treat each other, it's going to determine what the future looks like. Not just for Springfield, but for everyone, everywhere.
Wow. That's a powerful thought to end on. And remember, the story doesn't end here. It's up to all of us to stay informed, to think critically about what we hear, and to be the ones building bridges in a world that often seems determined to tear us apart. And that's a wrap on our deep dive into Springfield, Ohio. It's a town facing big questions, but also a town with a lot of heart.